The poet of hell, Dante Alighieri. They exiled him from Florence, then he exiled them into hell.
On the night of September 13 to 14, 1321, a 56-year-old man lay dying of malaria in Ravenna, far from his homeland. A political exile permanently banned from the Republic of Florence, he was condemned to be burned at the stake if he ever returned. Stripped of his wealth and forced to wander for nearly 2 decades, he appeared to be a completely defeated man. Yet shortly before dying, this exiled wanderer completed a monumental 14,233-line poem that fundamentally altered Western civilization. He had crafted an imaginative, terrifying journey through the 3 realms of the Christian afterlife, heavily punishing his political enemies in hell while immortalizing his lost love in heaven. His name was Dante Alighieri, and his refusal to surrender to political ruin transformed his personal catastrophe into the greatest single work of Italian literature. Dante Alighieri, known almost universally as Dante, was born in Florence around May 1265. He died in Ravenna on September 14, 1321. Although Italy as a unified national state would not exist for another 5 centuries, Dante's cultural identity was fiercely Florentine and deeply Italian. He operated as a statesman, political theorist, moral philosopher, and poet. While he held high municipal office during his life, his overarching historical importance stems from his revolutionary literary contributions. Dante is celebrated globally as the author of the Divine Comedy, completed in 1320, and is universally recognized as the father of the Italian language for his bold decision to write his masterpiece in the vernacular Tuscan dialect rather than medieval Latin. Dante was born into a prosperous but violently divided 13th century Florence. His family possessed modest wealth and noble ancestry. His father, Alighiero di Bellincione, was a moneylender belonging to the Guelph political faction. Dante faced early personal tragedy when his mother, Bella, died when he was roughly 7 years old, around 1272. In 1277, at age 12, his family arranged his marriage to Gemma Donati, the daughter of a highly powerful Florentine family. Despite this betrothal, his defining emotional experience occurred at age 9, in 1274, when he met Beatrice Portinari and was instantly captivated. This youthful infatuation evolved into a lifelong courtly obsession. Educationally, Dante immersed himself in classical philosophy and poetry within Florence, a city rapidly emerging as a financial and cultural capital of medieval Europe. Several key figures and events fundamentally shaped Dante's intellect and worldview. His early mentor was the renowned Florentine scholar and magistrate Brunetto Latini, who introduced him to classical Roman authors like Cicero and Virgil, teaching him the mechanics of rhetoric and civic duty. Dante also embraced the Dolce Stil Novo literary movement, which elevated love poetry to a profound philosophical and spiritual level. However, Dante was not solely a scholar, he was also a soldier. On June 11, 1289, the 24-year-old fought as a cavalryman in the bloody Battle of Campaldino, where the Florentine Guelphs defeated the rival Ghibellines. This military experience cemented his civic dedication. A year later, in 1290, Beatrice tragically died at age 24. Her death plunged Dante into profound grief. Dante first transitioned from an obscure scholar-soldier to a recognized public figure through early literary success. Between 1292 and 1294, he channeled his devastating grief over Beatrice's death into La Vita Nuova, The New Life, a brilliant hybrid of prose and lyric poetry documenting his unrequited love and spiritual awakening. Seeking to enter the governance of Florence, Dante faced a major legal hurdle. Nobles aspiring to public office had to join a commercial guild. In 1295, at age 30, Dante strategically enrolled in the Guild of Physicians and Apothecaries. This practical maneuver allowed him to serve in municipal councils. Throughout the late 1290s, he successfully executed diplomatic missions and built a reputation as an uncompromising advocate for Florence's political independence from the aggressive ambitions of the papacy. Dante's absolute breakthrough into political power occurred when he was elected to serve as a prior of Florence, one of the city's 6 supreme executive magistrates. He held this prestigious office for a 2-month term, from June 15th to August 15th, 1300. Though brief, this election was the zenith of his career and the ultimate catalyst for his ruin. Florence was bitterly divided between 2 warring Guelph factions: the White Guelphs, who opposed papal interference, and the Black Guelphs, who allied with Pope Boniface VIII. As prior, Dante sided with the White Guelphs and took strict measures against both extremes to maintain civic peace. His staunch defiance of the Pope marked him as a high-profile enemy. In November 1301, while Dante was in Rome, French troops allied with the Black Guelphs orchestrated a violent coup in Florence, effectively ending Dante's old life. The 1301 coup resulted in Dante's permanent exile, officially decreed in early 1202. Charged with political corruption, Italian peninsula, relying on noble patrons. From 1304 to 1307, he composed De Vulgari Eloquentia, a defense of the vernacular language, and the philosophical Convivio. In 1308, he began writing the Divine Comedy, laboring over its 100 cantos for over a decade. In May 1315, Florence offered an amnesty to its exiles if they paid a fine and underwent public humiliation. Dante vehemently rejected the offer, preferring honorable exile. He finally completed the Paradiso, the epic's 3rd and final part, in 1320, just a year before dying of quartan malaria in Ravenna in 1321. Dante is immortalized for one staggering achievement: the Divine Comedy. Originally titled simply Commedia, the epic traces a pilgrim's journey through hell, purgatory, and heaven, Paradiso. People paid intense attention because Dante populated the afterlife with recognizable historical figures, including corrupt popes, treacherous politicians, and local citizens, rather than just abstract mythological characters. Furthermore, he dared to write this 14,233-line epic in the everyday Tuscan vernacular rather than the scholarly Latin of the Church. This radical choice democratized literature, proving that the common tongue could express the highest philosophical and scientific concepts. Because of this single work, his dialect became the foundational blueprint for modern standardized Italian, granting Dante a permanent legacy as a cultural founding father. As a human being, Dante was notoriously stubborn, rigorously principled, and profoundly aware of his own intellectual genius. His central motivation was a deep-seated thirst for justice, driven by his bitter experience of political betrayal. A devout medieval Christian, Dante possessed the courage to violently criticize the institutional church, frequently denouncing the greed and corruption of the papacy. He passionately believed in separating church and state, arguing in De Monarchia for a secular emperor to rule the world politically. His working style was intensely disciplined and mathematically precise. He invented terza rima, an interlocking 3-line rhyme scheme, obsessing over the number 3 to reflect the Holy Trinity. His greatest weakness was unforgiving pride. He famously reserved hell's deepest circles for his personal enemies, yet he also possessed the stamina to endure 19 years of nomadic exile. Dante's life was riddled with brutal conflicts and monumental failures. His political career ended in complete catastrophic ruin. Despite his intelligence, he and the White Guelphs were entirely outmaneuvered by the Black Guelphs and Pope Boniface VIII, resulting in his lifelong banishment. Dante placed great hope in the Holy Roman Emperor Henry VII, whom he believed would unite the fractured Italian states and restore him to Florence. However, Henry died abruptly in 1313, completely shattering Dante's political dreams. As a writer, he was not universally beloved in his time. Traditional scholars fiercely criticized his use of vernacular as vulgar and inappropriate for serious theology. His biting criticisms of rival families, living political leaders, and powerful clerics made him numerous enemies, forcing him to rely constantly on the unstable charity of patrons like Can Grande della Scala. Dante's impact across multiple disciplines is virtually unmatched in European history. In the short term, his writings unified the fragmented dialects of the Italian peninsula, giving Italy a shared linguistic identity centuries before political unification. In literature, he directly paved the way for subsequent Renaissance writers like Petrarch, who perfected the Italian sonnet, and Giovanni Boccaccio, who famously added the word divine to Dante's epic. In religion, his terrifying, mathematically precise architecture of hell, with its 9 descending circles, permanently shaped the Western Christian imagination regarding sin and the afterlife. Culturally, Dante's work inspired centuries of secondary art, including Auguste Rodin's famous sculpture, The Thinker, originally conceived to represent Dante pondering the gates of hell. During the 19th century Risorgimento, Dante was resurrected as the ultimate symbol of Italian nationalism and resistance against foreign rule. Today, Dante Alighieri is universally revered as Il Sommo Poeta, the supreme poet. His historical image, depicted with a prominent aquiline nose and a laurel wreath, is instantly recognizable worldwide. Countless institutions bear his name, notably the Società Dante Alighieri, established in 1889 to promote Italian culture globally. His literary masterpiece is continuously adapted into films, video games, novels, and symphonies. The year 2021 marked the 700th anniversary of his death, prompting global exhibitions, academic conferences, and historical celebrations. His remains still rest in Ravenna, despite centuries of desperate attempts by Florence to reclaim the bones of the man they once threatened to burn alive. To this day, a grand but completely empty cenotaph stands in Florence, a permanent monument to the city's historical regret and Dante's enduring triumph. The life of Dante Alighieri reveals a profound truth about human resilience and the paradoxical nature of success. By every political metric of his era, Dante was a spectacular failure, an exiled politician who lost his home, his fortune, and his cause. Yet, he refused to let political defeat dictate his historical worth. Stripped of earthly power, he wielded his intellect as a weapon, constructing an eternal empire made entirely of words. His journey from the battlefields of Tuscany to the heights of literary immortality demonstrates that true influence is rarely forged in times of comfort. It is Dante's majestic response to suffering, injustice, and absolute loss that continues to resonate. He transformed his personal tragedy into a universal map of the human soul, proving that while armies and empires inevitably crumble, a brilliantly executed idea can conquer time itself.